In this course, you will learn how to edit the WordPress Classic Editor, which is bundled with the open source HTML What You See is What You Get editor, the TinyMCE. You will learn how to modify the toolbars and display only the relevant native buttons that you want, such as the button list or the block code ones. Also, let's edit the formatselect dropdown to show only the formats that we want. To do so, in the first part of the course, we'll dive deeper into debugging the code to understand more how to customize the TinyMCE editor. Then, as the highlight of this course, we'll be creating our own custom buttons, such as the highlighter, the feature, and the custom class button that enables you to add a custom class to the content. So, are you ready to upgrade your WordPress toolset and skills? Let's start. For this course, we use local to create a local WordPress environment. To download, it's free and simple. You just need to click here and answer a few questions. And also we use Visual Studio Code to code our custom plugin. So after you install local, you see an interface like this. And I recommend you to come here to Preference, New Site Default, and change the domain suffix to .test. And choose a site path where all your WordPress sites will be. I created a folder named WordPress inside our desktop, but feel free to choose your own folder and just click Apply. Now let me close this and let's create a new WordPress environment. Clicking the plus icon, create new site. Let's name it TinyMCE just to keep it simple. Continue. Let's just see the advanced options. Okay, this will be the site domain and the path as we added in the preference. Continue. It's okay to leave preferred. As it's a local environment, I'll add a simple username and password. Okay, add site. Now just wait a bit. It prompted for a yes or no question. You just need to hit yes. And that's it. When the site is ready, it will be on here, and you just need to click WP admin. Use the username and password that you created, and now we are going to add our custom plugin here. So let me minimize this. Let's start by creating a folder, new folder, and I will use the name of the course, but feel free to use a custom name. And what's the minimum requirement to have a plugin? So let's open the folder in VS Code. And if you want to have the same color as mine, just go to Extensions and install the OneDark Pro extension, Set Color Theme. So let's create a PHP file with the same name. And we just need to add this code with the plugin name, a description, a version number, and your author name. And as by default, let me show you. With the hello world, it opens the Gutenberg editor, and I'm not really used to it. I really like the classic one. So in this plugin, the only code that we're going to add is a simple hook to disable by default the Gutenberg editor. So let's save it. I'll close it here. Let's grab the folder and zip it. Compress the zip file. Cool, now we have the file to upload. Here in plugins, add new plugin, upload, just drag and drop here, install now, and activate. So you see that our title is here, our description as well, the version number and the author. And when you go to posts, our hello world post now has the classic view. So let's start customizing our plugin. First, let me click here to dismiss, and to customize it, we just need to access local and come here to go to site folder. So the path will be app, public, WP content. We're working with a plugin, and this is the file that is active in our WordPress environment. So let me open Visual Studio Code and drag this here. So this way we are editing an active plugin. So if I change here with exclamation mark and save it, we come here to plugins, you see the exclamation mark is here as well. I'm holding Windows key here, arrow to the left, and now select the Visual Studio Code to be here on the right. Exclude this, save it, zoom out here, and let's add our first code here to customize the toolbars button. So in this code, the TinyMCE before init is the filter hook. When this code is run, all the functions that have been attached to it will be called. So let's create the customized TinyMCE toolbar. Let me open the documentation link here. So this hook filters the TinyMCE config before init. And note that the first parameter passed to the hooked function is an array of settings for the TinyMCE editor. These settings can be modified by our custom function, that is this one, to change the behavior of the TinyMCE editor. So instead of naming MC init, let's just name it init and run it inside the print_r function to see what it's all about in the front end. So let's go here to posts. Let's work with the hello world, and before that let me go here to permalinks and change the post name, posts again, and hello world. So after saving here, we can see all the code here ready to be analyzed. Let me change here to one column so it's bigger and increase here a bit. So now let's search for toolbar. So the word toolbar. And you see here that there are 4 toolbars. The first one and the second one have buttons by default, but the third and fourth ones are empty. So you may be wondering, if by default there are 2 toolbars, why is only one showing up? That's because the toolbar 2 is hidden by default and you need to press the toggle toolbar to enable it. So here we have the 2 default toolbars. And in the next lesson, I will show you how to customize the default TinyMCE toolbars. The mission for this lesson is to clear all the default settings and reorganize the buttons into the 4 toolbars that we saw in the previous lesson. So still looking at the bug code here, in the toolbar 1, check this list. Each button has its own name. For example, let's get the formatselect one. This represents the headings and paragraphs here. So as a quick test, let's come here to our function and add the formatselect on the first toolbar. Let's save it and refresh. First of all, let me add a quick note here. I added an A just to test it out before starting recording. And you see that every time that I do update here but don't save it, it will say that there is a backup for this post. And it's something that, let me save it here. See? It pushes the content, and as we are going to refresh a lot, let me remove this functionality of WordPress, and to do so, we just need to paste, let me paste it here, this code that will be available to you in the lesson description. It's just a quick code that adds this CSS declaration to our WordPress admin, and it will hide this message. Let me save it here to show you. To save is just Ctrl S, and let me refresh here. So now the message is gone. Okay, so we can focus here again. So by adding this line of code, you're saying to the editor what button I want to be displayed in the first toolbar. So as you can see here, there's only the formatselect. And as the toggle is gone, the second row appears as well. So let me just copy and paste. So Ctrl C, Ctrl V, change toolbar to here. And let's add now bolds, and you may add multiple buttons, separating them by comma, and italic. Let me save it here, refresh. So now we have the bold and italics here. And again, I can learn which name to use by seeing here. Right now, there is only the one I select, but we may disable this code with Ctrl KC, save it, refresh, and now we can see all the native names again. Select again here, Ctrl KU, save it, and now it's back where we were at. Let me add the toolbar 3, the bud list and num list, and for the toolbar 4, the block code. Let me save it and update. So now we are using all the toolbars with our custom buttons. I mean the native buttons, but the ones that we choose to appear. So now we understand how to do basic edit, but it will look better if we had many buttons in only one row, right? So let me add the code that I usually use on my project. Also, I remove the buttons from the second row to keep everything in one toolbar only for now, and we don't need to add code to edit toolbar 3 and 4 because they don't have any buttons by default. So let me paste it here. So these are the native buttons that I usually use on my projects, and the toolbar 2 we are going to use to add our custom buttons later. Let me save it here and refresh. Perfect. In this lesson, let's take a closer look at the formatselect dropdown. It has many options that you might not really want to use or enable it to your client, such as the preformatted one, the heading 6, the 5. So the part of the code responsible for these options is the block formats one, like this. So let's press Ctrl F and search for block formats. And as you can see, no result is found. I'm not really sure why the block formats item doesn't appear on the debug code. If we have this block formats copied and we go to local, go to site folder, app, and open the public one, let me open here. And let's search for the block formats. We can see that there are mentions to it in the path here. So maybe that was the way that people found out about this option. And the snippet that I'm going to show you is with me a long time already, and I found about it in a post on the internet, probably at Stack Overflow. So I searched online again and found this post here by Joe Walton showing that there is this option to edit the block formats indeed. So let's copy this part of the code here and paste it right here. So now you can see that there is this address as well. So let me save it here and refresh. Now we can see this new type has been added. And if we search for block formats, now it's added as well. So usually in my projects, I just leave the paragraph and the headings 2 and 3. For that, we just need to delete the rest of the options and save it. Let's refresh the page. And now you can see that only the paragraph and headings 2 and 3 are being shown. Let's start the fun part of the course, creating our own custom buttons. I will use the second row or toolbar 2 for the custom buttons, but now that you know how to edit rows and toolbar, feel free to arrange the way you like it. In this course, we'll create 3 custom buttons, the highlighter, the featured, and the custom class. So let me copy here the code. It will be available for you to copy and paste as well. Here, adding the highlighter, feature, and custom class buttons. Let me save it here, refresh. I forgot to close here, but the code will be correct for you. So let me save it again. Okay, so here will be our row with the custom buttons. And each time you create a new button, you just need to come here and rearrange the way that you want it. So right now, nothing will happen, but it's already set for when we finish coding them. So the first one will be simple, just a simple highlight to the select part of the text. The second one will be fancier, creating a whole block of stylized content. And the last one will prompt a class name, which will be used to wrap the selected content in a div tag with the desired class name. I've been using WordPress for a long time, and when the new Gutenberg editor came out, I just didn't like it much. I've always preferred the Classic Editor. Maybe it's because I've been using it for so long, or maybe it's just easier to use. So I do prefer the Classic option, but at first I found it hard to change things in the TinyMCE editor, which is part of the Classic Editor. I even thought it couldn't be done, but then I found a really helpful guide on Envato Tuts Plus, and this guide opened my eyes. It made me excited about learning how to change and improving the TinyMCE editor, and that's why I mainly decided to make this course. So thanks a lot to Live Fun. That's from 2013, but it really helped me increase one more tool within my WordPress developer experience. So thank you so much. So in this video, let's focus in adding the boilerplate code needed to create our custom buttons. So let's start by creating a folder inside the root of our plugin, and let's name it TinyMCE. Inside of it, let's create the tinymce.php file and add this code snippet. So this code snippet is used to add new buttons to the TinyMCE editor in the WordPress admin area by registering a custom JavaScript file, so the custom.js, as a TinyMCE plugin. For example, with this first line of code, we are telling WordPress something like, when you are doing your usual actions in the admin head area, also run our custom TinyMCE buttons function. This way, we may customize the TinyMCE editor without altering the core WordPress files, which is the recommended way to do it in WordPress development. So here's just a quick note. Honestly, I don't believe that WordPress developers keep this type of boilerplate code structure in mind. So that's not something you always know how to do. To me, coding is like following a baking recipe. It's not necessary to memorize every ingredient for a particular cake, for example, but knowing where to find the recipe and on which page, that's the good part. So this course can serve as that go-to resource. So now let's save it, and let's also go to our main plugin file and include it to activate it. Okay, let's save it. And now let's focus in our TinyMCE plugin code. Let's create the custom.js file inside our TinyMCE folder. So custom.js file. So now this is another part of the boilerplate code. Let me show you what each part means. So this initial line is create a new plugin for TinyMCE named Artinel. Here you may name it the way that you want. And it's doing so by defining an object with specific properties and methods that TinyMCE expects for its plugins. Then we have the second part of the code here, that is the method of the plugin object. It's called when TinyMCE initializes the plugin. The editor parameter represents the TinyMCE editor instance, and the URL is the URL of the directory where the plugin is located, which we'll use later to get the icons of the buttons. Then this part here adds a new button to the TinyMCE toolbar with the identifier of test. And now regarding the button configuration. Here is the title, so it's the tooltip of the button. When we hover over the button, like this, the test will be displayed. Then the onClick defines what happens when the button is clicked. In this case, when the button is clicked, a function is executed. And this part here of the code replaces the current selection in the editor with our content variable here. If nothing is selected, it inserts test at the current cursor position. And then we just need to register the Artinel plugin with the TinyMCE in this line of code. Cool, so we've saved it already. Then we just need to go to our plugin main file. And now that we have successfully added the boilerplate code needed to configure the custom TinyMCE plugin, we just need to test it out by adding here the test. That's the one that we just created, and let's save it. And now let me refresh here the post. And as you can see, it looks like nothing happened, but if we hover over here, we can see the title tests, as I've mentioned before. So it's here, it doesn't have an icon yet, but let's test if it's doing its purpose. So it should output the word test. Let's see. Oh, it's working. See, clicking multiple times, it prints test multiple times as well, and it's also changed our selection. So here we are going to change the word writing to test. How cool is that? In the next lesson, we'll dive deeper into how to customize our button functionality and appearance. Now let's add an SVG icon to our custom button. And if you right-click the block code button, for example, let's inspect it. And we can see here that it contains an icon measuring 20 pixels in both width and height. So let me show you now Lucy that we're going to use for this project. It's an open source icon library, and with the initial test button, we will have a total of 4 custom buttons throughout the course. So I pre-selected 4 icons and added them to download in this class resources. But just to show you how easy it is to work with Lucy, we can search here for highlighter, and you can see the icon here. You just need to click, and the window size is a bit small here for this course, so I'll show you where to change here the width size. So let's put the same 20 size, and here we can just click download SVG. But you have all the 4 icons that I'm going to use throughout this course for you to easily download them. Let me get it here. And you just need to add inside the TinyMCE folder. And now let's head back into our TinyMCE plugin code. Do you remember this URL parameter? We can use it to access the icon inside our newly added icon folders. As you can see, there is this test SVG here. So here, right below the title, we may press enter here, jump a line, and add this image URL plus the path of the icon. Let me save it here, and let's refresh the page. And now we can see that our custom button is using our custom icon from the seed, and it's working exactly the same as well. Okay, so we have learned how to update the selected content to a new text, but how to wrap a content in HTML text similar to the native TinyMCE bold button. For example, check this out. If we select a word and click the bold button, for example, this writing word, and click the bold button, we can see that the word was wrapped in a strong tag here in the text. See? The selected text was wrapped within this strong text. So how could we get this similar functionality to our custom buttons? Let's start by accessing our plugin code and creating a new variable called selection. So here, let's add var selection equal to the editor.selection.getContent function. As we can see in the TinyMCE documentation, the getContent function will get the HTML contents of the current active editor. And if you want to get its plain text, we just need to add the property format with the value text to it. So like this. And now to test it out, let's add the selection variable to the content. So here, content will be text plus selection. Let's save it. And now let's select this start. Let's first refresh here. Let's select writing again and click the test. Cool. So it added the text word plus what we had selected. So it's working. Now you can see how easy it would be to recreate the bold default button, right? So we just need that content will be the strong tag plus what we have in selection plus closing the strong tag again. So let me save it here, refresh the page, and now I'll select writing and use our test button. How cool is that? It's working similar to what we have to the TinyMCE default bold button. Why it's not equal? Because this method is not really the recommended approach. For example, the default bold button, the selection, persists beyond the button press. Because if we select it and keep pushing, it's just going to add more and more tags. And that's not what we want, right? If we push the bold button once, it's going to add the bold functionality, but if we select again, it's going to remove it. And if we try to recreate this functionality with our custom code, it will be a much more complex code. So in the next lesson, I'll show you how I would recommend creating the native bold button functionality. So what would be the correct way to replicate the bold button? Let's remove everything from inside the onClick function and add a console log. That's going to show us the editor.formatter.match function targeting the bold. So let's save it here. And first, let me show you the documentation. So as you can see in the TinyMCE documentation, the match method matches the correct selection or specified node against a format name. So let's come here, refresh, open DevTools. Let me inspect here. Open the console. Let me target here the writing. And now click the test. So it's saying that is not bold is false because it's not bold. But if we add bold here and click test, it's going to say true. This way we have a form to verify if the current selection is bold or not. So now we just need to use other two methods, apply and remove, to update the editor. Let me close this. And instead of the console log, let me put this code here. So it will check if it's bold, we are going to remove the bold. But if it's not bold yet, we are going to apply it. Let me save it here, refresh. And now if I select here and click test, it's applied bold. But if I click it again, it's removed. So after this test, we can see that it's working better than the approach that we did last lesson with the selection and toggle functionality. So way better. But how could we customize it even further by creating our own custom formats? That's what we're going to do in the next lesson. The mission of this lesson is to use our test button to wrap our selection a span tag with the class blue. As you can see in TinyMCE documentation, we have the formats. So it's an option used to override default TinyMCE formats or add custom formats, that's what we want, to the editor. So TinyMCE is equipped with a formatting engine that allows us to register a set of styles and attributes as a name format. And as their example, the bold format, that is a style is applied to text when the bold button is clicked. So let's try to do our own now. So let's start by creating a new format. We may call it any name that you want. For example, new format, but I'll keep the name test. So let's add it here beneath the init. So this code adds a custom formatting option named test. And this format, when applied, will wrap the select test within an inline element of a span tag. And quick note here that we need to use an inline HTML tag such as span or anchor tag A. A block tag such as div won't work. Also, this code applies the class blue to it. If we want to add more than one class to it, we could simply add a space and add another class here, okay? And now to test our new custom format, let's update where it's bold to the format test. So let's come here, instead of bold, as we create a new format, I'm holding Ctrl and pressing D here to select all the bold here, and I'm going to change to test. Let me save it here and refresh. Okay, so now I'm selecting writing and pressing the test button. See, it added as a span. Let me remove this. I'm not sure where it's appearing. Let me click again, so it will remove the span. And as we can see, it's toggling. So here is span, and now it's not wrapped in a span tag. Okay, and with the class blue, how cool is it? Click here again, and it's not wrapped anymore. Okay, so it's working. It's wrapping the content within span tags with the class blue, but as we can see, nothing really changes in the TinyMCE editor and the front end of the site as well, because if we save it here, update, and see the post, nothing changed, but we can see that is wrapped within a span tag with the class blue. So the question is how to style the editor and then the front end of the site. And we are going to start tackling this problem in the next lesson. To add custom CSS style to our TinyMCE editor, let's first create a new folder here inside our TinyMCE folder, and let's name it CSS. And inside of it, let's create a CSS file called tinymce.css. And inside of it, let's create a simple CSS declaration using the class blue, setting the color to blue. Let me save it here. And now let's add the following code to tinymce.php. Right here, So what this code does is to define a function that adds a custom style sheet to the TinyMCE editor in WordPress. So we are defining this function here and using add editor style. We can see here in WordPress documentation that's the function responsible for custom TinyMCE editor style sheets. And we can see here that the function is then hooked to WordPress action admin init, ensuring that the style sheet is loaded in the admin area where the TinyMCE editor is used. So let's save it and refresh the page. How cool is that? Now the class blue is correctly adding the color blue to it, as we can see here in our TinyMCE CSS declaration. So let's see in the front end. Right now it's not working, but we will learn the correct way to add CSS style to the front end with code inside a plugin in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to style the front end of the site. So let's start by selecting WordPress and wrap it in a span with the class blue. Let's save it here, update. And now if you view post, we can see that it's not blue yet, but if we inspect it here, it's saying that it has the class blue. So how to style it? Let's begin by creating a new folder called CSS in the root of our custom plugin. So here is the root. I'm just clicking outside of everything and then add new folder. Let's call it CSS and let's add a CSS file. Let me name it main.css. And now let's add the same declaration that we did in the previous lesson. So it's saved. And now how to add it to WordPress to load in the front end of the site. WordPress uses a system called enqueuing to add both CSS and JavaScript to the front end. This ensures compatibility and prevents conflict with other plugins and themes. Let's use the WP enqueue script hook to add our CSS file. And as you can see here in the documentation, there is a quick example here, example of using scripts and styles from a single action hook. So we are using WP enqueue scripts to add both style and script to the front end. So let's come here to our main file, plugin file, and add this code snippet that represents the correct way of adding CSS to WordPress via plugin in its simplest form. So if you want a simple and correct way of adding custom CSS with a plugin, use this boilerplate code. So it's worth noting that plugin's URL is a function that you place file this way as a second parameter, and here you have access to the structure of the plugin. So you start with a slash here, then CSS and main CSS. That's our file here. Let's see if it's being loaded in the front end. Let's come here, hello world, refresh. It's not working yet. Okay, it wasn't working because in fact we can't have this slash here. Let me save it here and refresh. And now it's correcting, adding the blue. And as you can see here, F12, network, let me refresh here, CSS. You can see that the main.css is being correctly loaded here. Cool, so now we have the blue in the front end as we expected, but as you can see, we have two equal CSS files. So one here in the root and another one here in the TinyMCE, one for the backend and the other for the front end. As we want to use the same classes for both environments, we may change the path of the custom CSS here. Instead of this one, let's add this one here without the slash. Let me save it and make sure it's working as expected, and here in the back end as well. So now we can come here and delete the CSS folder. So now we can work with only one style sheet now. Before starting creating our custom blocks for real, let's learn one more cool trick, how to add custom shortcuts to our custom TinyMCE buttons. So let's work in our custom.js file here. Let me just first show you the bold button, for example. Do you see that there is the shortcut Ctrl B and italic Ctrl I? So if we place here the cursor on top of the right click and press Ctrl B, it will toggle the bold. Ctrl B again, it will toggle again. And the same for Ctrl I. Now it's italic, and now it's not. So how to create our own shortcut? Note that there are already some predefined shortcuts for both TinyMCE Editor, as I showed you here, and browsers, such as Google Chrome, for example. So if I write something here, like the letter A, and press Ctrl Z, it will undo. Ctrl Y, it will redo. And for example, Ctrl T, it will open a new browser tab. So it would be better to not create in these kinds of native shortcuts because it's going to get conflict. But there are not a lot of native shortcuts using the Alt key, so let's use it. So the mission of this lesson is to toggle our tests button by pressing Alt plus the letter T. So first of all, let's refactor our code. Let's get all this logic here. Let me cut with Ctrl X and place it here. Let me move this here. And let's place it here. So let's create a function. So function toggle test. That will have the editor as a parameter. And put this inside of here. So now on click of our custom button text, what's going to do is going to run this function. Let's save it. So now let me refresh here and see if it's still working. Okay, so it's still working. It's the same thing. But why did we refactor this part of the code? It's because we don't need to repeat this toggle logic for the shortcut. Let me show you why. To create a shortcut, we can come here beneath the buttons and add this code for the creation of a shortcut. So it's editor dot add shortcut. The first parameter is the keyboard shortcut that we're going to use, so Alt plus T. The second parameter is the shortcut description. It doesn't seem to appear in the front end, so it's probably just to provide some context. And the third parameter is the function that will be executed when the keys are pressed. So that's why we refactor our code. We can run the shortcut, we can ask the shortcut to perform this toggle test, instead of having all this code pasted here and here. And if you change in one place, you need to remember and change it in the other place as well. So now let's test it out. Let me save it here, refresh. Let me place the cursor here, click the writing word and press Alt T. And it's turning blue. It's wrapping the content around the span tag with the class blue. I'm pressing again and it's toggling it. How cool is that? And before wrapping up this lesson, note that the bold and italic buttons show the shortcut command beside the button name. So Ctrl I here and Ctrl B. Let's add it as well. So here, test. Let's just add Alt plus T. Save it. Refresh here. And now we can say it's looking pretty similar to the other native buttons. And it's working if we click here or if we press Alt T. At this phase of the course, we should be familiar with the basics of how to create custom buttons for the TinyMCE editor in WordPress. Now let's start creating our highlighter button. You are probably thinking that we should wrap the selection within a span tag again and create some CSS style to add a yellow background color to it, right? And it would work as well, but we wrap the selection. If we wrap the selection, let me show you here, the writing. Let me add mark here, the mark HTML tag, paste it here, and let's see the visual part. So it's highlighted. By doing this, we produce the same result, but probably in a more semantic way with only HTML. So now feel free to treat this lesson as a challenge, trying to create the highlighter button. We already have here the icon. Okay. And you may check how we did in custom.js and try to create the other one as well. Or you may continue viewing the lesson and let's code together, shall we? So here in custom.js, let's copy the code responsible for adding the custom button and duplicate it. So this is the code here to add buttons. Let's duplicate it here, paste it here, and let's update where is test to highlighter. Highlighter, and let's change here to Alt H. Let's save it. And note that for the toggle test here, we will need to duplicate it as well, only to change the test, right? So it would be better if you could add a new parameter beside the editor. So let's do this. Let's add here the format parameter and put it instead of the hard-coded test string here, format. Perfect. And let's also update the name to a more generic one. So instead of toggle test, let's put toggle format and update it here and here. And let's also add a new format. So we may copy this here. So instead of test will be highlighter. We can remove this class blue because it will be an inline mark HTML. And let's also add a shortcut. So let's copy here, paste. So Alt H will be highlighter shortcuts, and let's save it. So we did a lot of changes. Let's see if it's working. Let me refresh here. So the icon is being correctly added. I can click here, click highlighter, and it seems that is not working. Oh, okay. I understand what happened. If we open here DevTools and open the console, we can see toggle test is not defined because right here in the code, I forgot to change toggle test to toggle format. So let's copy here and paste here. Before saving it, see that any of the buttons, no button is working at all. That's because there's a console error. Let me save it here, refresh, and now, okay, the console log, the error is gone, but it's still not working. Oh, I see. I can't copy all this editor on it. In fact, I need to duplicate on this part of the code. So let me cut this here, add it here, remove this. Let me save it, refresh. Oh, now I see what I've been doing wrong. Remember that we updated toggle format to this format? Okay, so here we are using toggle format only with the editor without the format at all. So let's add here, for example, to the test, the format test, right? Let me copy here. The same for the first short code here. And now for the second one, it will be triggering the highlighter format. And let's update here as well. I zoom it out so I can see the whole code better, but let me zoom it in again so you can follow, being able to view it better. So now, after making these changes, let me refresh here, click welcome, it's working, and it's highlighting as well. If we check out here the text, you can see it's wrapping around the mark HTML tag, and it's working as expected. In this lesson, let's code the feature button. You know the drill. Let's start off by creating a new format called feature. And first of all, we open here custom.js. We can close the Explorer here. So let's create a new custom format. So we copy this part, not the whole editor on init. So just this part here. And let's add it. But this time, instead of using inline property, let's use the block. So here we write block, and the block will be a div, because we want to wrap the content in a div tag. Let's also add the feature class so we can style it later. So let's add here classes, column, feature. Okay, let's save it. Let's also add a button. So we may copy here the highlighter and paste right below it and change here to, let me control and letter D all of this and change to featured. but this one with capital F, and the shortcut will be Alt F. So let's add here the shortcut, Alt F, featured, and the format will be featured as well. Let's save it. Let's refresh the page, and we can see the feature is right here. So before testing, let's add the feature class to our CSS. So it's adding some style to the div and to the text inside of it, removing its margin. So let me save it here. We can close it for now. And now if you refresh here and select the content, let's try to use it. It's not working yet. Let's see if something's wrong here. Featured. Okay, I forgot to add feature as the new format. So now we are properly registering feature. So let me save it here, refresh. And now let me just add the cursor here. And as we click feature, we can see it's working, but it's a little bit odd of this break here. Let me untoggle it. Try to remove this and let's see it now. Okay, so it's working when we select a paragraph, but let me undo it. As you can see, we have undone and copy and paste. So now we have two paragraphs and add the feature again. So as you can see, each paragraph will be wrapped within its own div. So how to make our whole section become wrapped in only one div? As you can see here, two divs, right? So there's an option, a parameter that we can add here in the feature. Just add a comma here and add wrapper. True. Let's save it. Refresh here. Let's first update this. So we now have two. And now we can click and it's going to be only one div. So the count will be within the feature class. And we can also click here and add another wrapper. It's working as expected. And if we click here and use the shortcut Alt F, it's going to unwrap. So now you're starting to understand how powerful knowing this kind of customization of the TinyMCE editor and how you can create a lot of possibilities that will help you and your clients when working in the WordPress editor. I finished last lesson without showing you how the code is, how the content is in the front end. So let me open here. And as you can see, we have the content wrapped in a div with the feature class. But as you can see here, there's not this space because there are some other styles that are applied only to the front end. So if you want to add the spacing, we can see here, let me inspect. We can see there are two features, right? So let me copy here and add the feature class. When one feature class is beside another feature class, let's add a margin top of 20 pixels. Let me save it here, refresh. Now we can see there is the space, and if you refresh here, you can see only a bit changed. But also, if you don't want to do something like that, also changing the front end, that's why I showed you in this course how to have a different style sheet for the back end and a different one for the front end. Okay, so let me remove this for now here. And in this lesson, we are going to talk about a method available in TinyMCE documentation, because after reading more about it, I found out that there is already a toggle method that has the same functionality as we were creating in the toggle format. If you remember it here, this custom function that we created, it turns out that TinyMCE already has something, so we don't need to code it our own. So let's get the test, for example. So here the test, instead of toggle format, let me show you here. There is this toggle that is native from TinyMCE. So let me click toggle here. And as you can see, toggles the specified formats on and off. Let's try using that. Let's try first with the test. So instead of using our custom, let's add editor.formatting.toggle, and let's toggle the test. Okay, let me save it. So here's the button. So it's only going to work for the button when we click, not the shortcode, but we're going to change that after. Let me come here, refresh. Let me undo this first. Remove here. Let me save it. Okay. So now if we click here, you can see that's working as well. So we don't need this function anymore, but it was good to show you that it's possible to create custom functions and apply it on click. So here we can remove. And now let me zoom out so it's easier here just to copy and change it here. Here is the highlighter, and here the features. And we can do the same here as well. Okay, so we don't have our custom function anymore. Let's save it here and test if everything is working fine. Okay, it's working. So this is a quick refactoring of our code, but it's good to know that when they offer you a native way of doing things, it's better to stick with it, but we can also further customize with our own functions. Now let's focus on the most complex custom button so far, the custom class button. Let's start off by coming here to our custom.js and registering a new button, a new format. So let's copy this, and the new format will be called custom class. It will be a div, a block. The wrapper will be true again, but this time the classes will be instead % and the name class. Note that the % symbol with the text class is a placeholder, indicating that the actual class name will be provided dynamically when the format is applied. So now let's add a button for this new functionality. It will be the custom class button. The title will be custom class. The shortcut will be Alt-C. And here we can change both to custom class. Okay, let's save it. But instead of using toggle, let's use the apply. And let's add a second parameter here. That's going to be the class with the featured class. So note that we need to use the same word class because that's the one we are using here in the placeholder. So let's save it, refresh here and see if it's working. So let's click here, add the custom class, and it successfully added the feature custom class because that's the one that we added over here. One note of it is that unfortunately we are using here the apply method and not the toggle. So what happens if we click again here? It's going to wrap again and again in a div. And that's pretty unfortunate because why can't we use the toggle function like other buttons? And I swear to you, I spent a long time diving deep into this issue, checking TinyMCE documentation, testing codes, but it seems that the toggle functionality only works if there are no variables being added dynamically to the editor. Let me show you here. Instead of apply, let's try toggle again. Save it, refresh here. See? It has the same behavior as the apply. Maybe that's a bug with the TinyMCE version that WordPress uses, but I'm not really sure. But anyway, it's way better to just click and be able to add a custom class with a button instead of coming here and trying to write div and close, right? So let's keep developing it, because here we don't want the dynamic value to be hard-coded as the feature class. Let's create a new function, prompt the user for a custom class name. So remember when we create a custom function here, let's create it again. So the function will be prompt for class. Here the editor.windowmanager.open. This line uses the windowmanager.open method of the TinyMCE editor to create and open a dialog window. I will show you in a second how it works. It's pretty cool. And then we have the configuration object for the dialog window with other properties such as the title. So here, for example, enter custom class, the body that defines the content of the dialog window. In this case, it's a single text box input. And then we have the onSubmit. That's a function that is called when the dialog form is submitted. So it's when the user press the OK in the dialog box. And I'm going to show you in a second. So now let's update our custom class button to run this prompt for class. Let's save it here. So on click, it's going to run this function with the editor. Let's save it and test it out. Let's refresh here, click, custom class. So it's prompting for the custom class here, as we can see. The types text box, here will be the input, that's going to be the class added. As you can see here, label class, and the title enter custom class. So let's try to enter featured and press OK. As you can see, it worked. And if not featured, we can try test, for example. Okay, you can see nothing changed because it's not styled, but there is this correct placement of the custom class. How cool is that, huh? So one more thing, let me refresh here. What happens if we click custom class, but click OK without an input? See, it's going to add the percentage class. So that's an issue, because imagine the client doing this and wrapping in this odd class name. It's not cool. So let's quick fix that right here. Let's wrap this in an if. So if there is a class name added by the user, we run this code. Let's save it here, refresh, click OK. Nothing happened, but if we click and add the feature class, you can see it's working as expected. So that's it for this course. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you use this course content many times when you need to create custom functionalities to the default classic WordPress editor. For future reference on this topic, I'll include a blueprint plugin file in the next lesson. When you need it, this will help you kickstart your custom plugin development and begin working on it faster.